Good morning, everyone, and we hope you're all having a wonderful Thursday morning. We have another great show today with friends of the show, Andrew Feldman, Inez Stepman, and Katie Halper.
Plus, lawyer Steve Donziger himself joins us to discuss his latest charges in the case against Chevron. But first, the Senate advanced a bipartisan infrastructure bill on Wednesday evening, setting the bill up for a final vote in the coming days. The bill proposes $550 billion in new spending on roads, bridges, broadband access, and green energy. So what do you think about this, Kim?
Well, until they have something, how long are we going to take to really actually see this bill actually go through? I mean, I just feel like right now it's still a lot of nothing, until they actually come to a real, true agreement and move forward with this thing.
I think of the joke I've frequently seen on Twitter that X is infrastructure. This is a joke like a lot of people on the left made and then the right have kind of appropriated, where you just take something totally unrelated like anti-racism is infrastructure or something like that in order to make infrastructure more exciting, I think, to like the more woke activist type people, because we're always talking about doing infrastructure. Like that was the joke during the entire Trump presidency, that this week is infrastructure week and we're finally going to get some big infrastructure deal. But it never happens because for some reason it's just always kind of shelved.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, it's just still to me, it's still just a lot of nothing until there's actually something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, also, the Biden administration is facing difficulties amid another changing narrative. Vaccinated and unvaccinated Americans are both being asked to start wearing masks again while simultaneously pushing the vaccines. Today, the president is expected to lay out his plans for ramping up vaccinations, including a policy that federal workers must get the shot or submit to regular COVID testing. The media is treating Biden's administration much differently than they treated Trump when COVID first came to the U.S. The mainstream has turned the blame on the unvaccinated for the spread of the variant instead of the yo-yo messaging pushed by the CDC and the administration. One thing that really stands out to me on this story is the fact that, just the other day, Joe Biden was in a CNN town hall and he said, if you get the vaccine, you won't get the virus. If you get the vaccine, you won't be hospitalized. And then the CDC comes out and says, wait a minute, not so fast. Actually, new data suggests that you can. And so therefore, everybody needs to mask up. So this really doesn't seem much different than what we saw with the Trump administration and the CDC, where Trump would say something like, it's going to be gone by Easter. And the CDC says, wait a minute, not so fast.
Yeah, the CDC is actually not making a lot of sense at all right now. Rochelle Walensky said, I think yesterday, that, 1 in 20 vaccinated people could get the Delta variant, which I'm not even sure that math actually checks out. I saw a lot of people on Twitter criticizing her for that. And also this new theory that the theory of bringing the mask mandates back is that the viral load of a vaccinated person who contracts the Delta variant is similar to the viral load of an unvaccinated person, meaning that a vaccinated person might be just as likely, even though they're still protected against severe disease and death, but they're maybe just as likely to spread COVID as an unvaccinated person if they have it, which is different than, originally with the other strain, we were being told that even if you got it, if you're vaccinated, you're really unlikely to spread it. But now we're not actually clear where that, if you look closely, they have not released that data, the CDC. So we're not clear where that's coming from and if it has to do with our vaccines or if that was found true based on some of the other vaccines that are being used in other countries. So the CDC really needs to release that data so we can look at it for ourselves, because right now it's just it's totally inconsistent between what Biden is saying and what Walensky is saying.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of inconsistency between those two. And, really this whole thing to me just kind of goes to show that, had they just been a little bit more, I feel like, honest with the American people by saying there's a lot we just don't know, rather than saying, we know if you do this, then XYZ will happen. I mean, we've been hearing this all year. It was just lock down for 2 weeks. And if you just lock down for 2 weeks, then everything will be okay. And then it was just wear a mask. And if you just wear a mask, then everything will be okay. This will all end. And now it's just take the vaccine and this will all end. And rather than being so definitive, I feel like in their claims, they should have just said, look, We don't know. This is new. But we're looking and we're learning and we're gonna try this. So let's try locking down for 2 weeks and seeing how that works.
Right.
And, because they're just losing the trust and the faith in the American people. And then they go and they blame it on Fox News. And they're not taking any personal responsibility. And this is the Trump administration and the Biden administration. Neither of them are really different in how they're making these definitive statements, and then it turns out it's not accurate.
Right.
They're losing the trust of the American people. People are becoming weary. They're not wanting. And this latest push where Biden says get the vaccine and everything's going to be okay, and then the CDC says wait a minute, not so fast. People are going to have had enough, and they're going to give up doing anything at all.
Well, the administration clearly wants everything to be okay, which is exactly what we saw from the Trump administration. Remember Trump at those briefings last year? You could feel his desire for this thing, the pandemic, which was clearly tanking his reelection chances. I personally think prior to the pandemic, Trump was a narrow favorite to be reelected. I think Biden was his toughest opponent, actually. But, then everything went to hell and his chances fell. And you could see him so fierce, wanting everything to just be fine again. And I can almost see a little bit of that same inclination in Biden, who, wants this to be done, come out of this with a big victory to head toward midterms. But now a bipartisan group is pushing Biden on the origins of the virus and urge the administration to be tougher on China, a promise Biden made many times on the campaign trail. Yeah, this is China is obviously the object of so much of our attention now because of the origins of COVID. I don't think this is a question that's been sufficiently investigated whatsoever. Of course, we have the issue that we may never know because China is very opaque and authoritarian.
Right.
We were, and everyone in our government, assured us that it was that COVID had natural origins, and you were an insane, deluded conspiracy theorist to even consider any other possibility. And then they had to walk that back when not right-wing crazy people, but mainstream health scientist type people said, there's kind of some sketchy stuff going on here. I wouldn't, rule out the lab origin theory as well. I also just think, and I'll see some people say, well, does it really matter? Are you kidding? It matters to me. I want to know. I want to know how we got this most horrible thing to happen in the last 50 years.
Right. Well, I certainly think we should know the origin of the virus because, look, if this was made in a lab, then we absolutely need to know how did that happen, and let's ensure that never happens again. We will not go through this again because of some scientific experiment. But at the same time, I feel like, okay, so let's go ahead and investigate this. Do you really think that the American government is going to come out and say, maybe we have some responsibility in this? We're seeing what's happening with Fauci, right? They're not going to take any responsibility and say, well, okay, maybe this came from a lab in China that we were helping fund, or maybe it didn't even come from that lab. Maybe it came from a different lab. I don't know. And they say, well, it turns out it came from, over here, or it came from over there, or it came from, wherever. I just don't think they're ever going to be honest about that. And if they do investigate it, they will, no matter what, blame it on China.
Yeah, or they're going to blame it on you. They're going to say, if you had only worn 3 masks instead of 2, we would have beaten this pandemic months ago, right? It's your fault. That's what I get so frustrated with these officials. Clearly, we have lots of rational questions about what the U.S. government and the Chinese government have done, but it's the blaming of the people who, because after a year and a half of totally altering our lives and wearing masks and not seeing friends and family and doing everything we were told, it's still our fault. Well, if you could just mask a little harder it's not even for a little bit longer, it's forever, right?
I just read I read an article the other day where the medical expert was actually recommending that we start wearing goggles. I'm not kidding you. They were saying masks, goggles, triple vaccinate. Now Pfizer's saying you're going to have to get a 3rd shot because their vaccine is wearing off. And it is going to be a bit never ending. Look, and I'm all about keeping our most vulnerable safe. And the thing that really gets me about all of this is all of the finger pointing. It's your fault you're not wearing, you anti-maskers, or you Fox News watchers, or you Facebook conspiracy theorists, and or you unvaccinated people. And look, as we're talking about infrastructure, the one thing they could have been building into this infrastructure packet, which I have never understood from the beginning of this pandemic, was why are we not ramping up gear? Why are we not ramping up? If we were afraid of overwhelming hospitals, then why weren't we building more hospitals the way Russia and China, the way they did this? Why aren't we, we know masks are effective if they're the N95 masks. Why are we not mass producing those and delivering them to everybody? Why aren't we working on, specifically with infrastructure? What gets me is we now know that the vast majority of the spread happens inside in unventilated places that are not well ventilated. Why are we not adding this, like China? When you actually study what they did, the government actually told all of their big buildings, you need to be doing ventilation. You cannot use circulated air right now because this virus will just circulate around the building. So why are we not investing in purifying the air a bit where we are, making sure they're well ventilated, making sure that there's, if they know that UV light is killing the virus or something, installing that in all of the nursing homes in America? I mean, what the heck is going on? Why are we not protecting our most vulnerable?
Testing as well. We could have massively ramped up our testing capacity and then actually follow through. Actually have people getting tested when they're entering buildings. The kind of cheap. They don't need to be the 100% accurate test just to catch some of those infections. And we're not. We kind of gave up on that whole thing because we had the vaccines coming, but now we have the vaccines and it's not enough. So I would still like to put more effort into testing, but the FDA took forever to even approve those, and it's kind of given up on it. Anyway, we'll tell you what's on our radars coming up next. Stay with us.